Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of Steelers Stat Geek. This is behind the steel curtain deputy editor Dave Schofield coming at you once again with, as always, as the norm. I am glad he's become a fixture on the show. This is great. Brother time every week. Big bro Rich. How's it going?
All right. How are you doing? Welcome, Steeler fans.
Yeah, I'm here. I've had a very interesting, eventful day. We will get to talking about that later on in the show after we cover some other stats. And we will also want to mention we're going to go ahead and kick off so to give some people that like to join in and get the notification and join in the live chat and watch live, give some people a chance to make sure they're here. Just want to mention there was some Steelers news today. The Steelers hired a new wide receivers coach. It was neither of the candidates that were reported as being the final two candidates. It was completely under the radar. None of the reports we saw even mentioned this name, that the Steelers hired Ike Hilliard, who, when the news came out, I talked to Jefferson Hartman. I got to say Jefferson. I can't help it. When I talked to Jeff Hartman, and I'm like, I know that name, but for some reason, once they said the name Ike, the only Ike I could picture in my brain was Ike Taylor. And I'm like, Ike Taylor is not the new Steelers wide receivers coach. I said, but I know the name. I said, I know he was a player. So, of course, I looked it up real quick to see that he played 12 years in the NFL. He was the 7th overall pick in 1997 to the New York Giants, played for the Giants 8 seasons, and then played 4 seasons in Tampa Bay, which, interesting connection, in his time as a receiver at Tampa Bay, who was the defensive backs coach?
You asking me because that's obvious.
That's so obvious. Yeah, it was Mike Tomlin.
I know.
So there was there is the connection there somewhere. So he's been the wide receivers coach for the Redskins for the last, oh my goodness, it's been a while that he's been there.
When he was there, he came when Jay Gruden came. Didn't Jay Gruden pick him up and bring him in?
I think so.
He was
been there 1 year before.
He was there, was gone, and came back with Jay Gruden.
Gotcha. Yes. Yeah. So that was some Steelers news that we have. We are actually going to talk more about that hire, as to let you all know, we're going to split this into 2 shows, try to keep it 2 nice and tight shows. One will be out in podcast form on Wednesday morning. The other should come out Wednesday afternoon. And that will be the Q&A, the Stat Geek Q&A. That's what we're going to start off talking out there. We're going to talk a little bit more about that hire. But that was some Steelers news. Plenty of other Steelers news that we've had over the weekend and to start the week. I'm just going to say, we don't usually hear from Mike Tomlin this time of year, and we heard from Mike Tomlin. But we're going to dive into the Stat Geek stuff.
We didn't just hear from Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin made an appearance, kind of thing. It wasn't just, he said something, then the Steelers put it out. It went beyond that. That was
and not only
used to that.
I have seen some people who are some of the harshest Mike Tomlin critics say, wow, that's our head coach. It was great. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, because there's more to that story that we want to make sure that we get out there. So let's cover our topic, and then we'll have some more time to discuss that after we get going. And our topic,
thanks you, Snowman, for the update on the Penguins game.
Oh, I knew that. That's part of the reason we started a little bit later, is I didn't go to get stuff set up until intermission. They were up 5-0 at one point. They're up 5-2. What's great is if the Penguins win tonight, they take over first place in the Metropolitan Division. They're only 1 point behind the Capitals, who played last night and lost. I think it was last night. I get my nights mixed up, but anyway, they're not playing tonight, so they have a chance to move into first place. So, as you know, we're all Steeler fans here, but at least us, we're also Penguins fans. I know a lot of you are as well. So, turnovers. We're not talking takeaways. We're not talking about the good stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about the crummy stuff to talk about. We are talking about turnovers. And unfortunately, the Steelers are in the midst of a NFL leading streak that we do not really wish to discuss, but we must. And that is their their streak of consecutive games with at least one turnover. Do you remember what that number is, bro?
Hold on, 23.
It is 23. Here's the better question. Do you remember the last game where they did not have a turnover?
Yeah, I think Bradshaw was playing quarterback.
Yeah. How can you not laugh at your own jokes? That was a good one.
All
right. Bradshaw was playing quarterback. No, actually, it was very significant because no, I'm thinking of the wrong game. I was going to say it was a Thursday night game, but it was the year before that was the Thursday night game that you and I were sitting at.
Correct.
This one was a game where after the Steelers gave up a touchdown of letting the Carolina Panthers march right down the field, they came back, scored on the first play, and then a couple plays later scored a defensive touchdown. And next thing you know, it was 21-7, and the Steelers never looked back as they defeated the Carolina Panthers, scoring over 50 points and not having a turnover on a Thursday night. So that's the last time back in 2018. They have had a turnover every game since. Now, the question is, how much are these turnovers affecting the outcome of games? What do you think? Do you think it's a big deal?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
It's well, first of all, you don't want to turn the ball over because you're giving them opportunities to score when you're not. So if you just want to play geeky numbers, just the numbers themselves should tell you not good.
Oh, and I have geeky numbers because
you have geeky numbers.
Geeky numbers,
no,
never.
Way.
Okay. Well, first of all, the Steelers led the NFL in takeaways this past year, where they went absolutely nuts. So they jumped from 15 in 2018 all the way up to where they had double that with I think either 10 or 11 games into the season. It was crazy. And they ended up with,
I want to say it was week 11 that they
something like that.
Hit double that.
They end up with 38. Great number, great totals. The problem with that, with the 38 takeaways, was what was their turnover margin? What was their plus minus for the season?
12.
No, it was only 8. They led the league in takeaways and only had a plus 8.
And that's what hurts.
That's what hurts.
Even when our defense gave our offense opportunities, we didn't take advantage of those opportunities a lot. Plus, half the time we were just giving the ball right back, it seemed like.
Yeah, there's some of these games we'll break down into it. But so the Steelers had 30 turnovers in 2019. Now, we're not just going to focus completely on 2019. We're going to put it in context so we can talk about it moving forward. Well, just to kind of put that in context, they had 26 in 2018. So there it is. And so some people, like Ryan said, Duck and Mason for you. They only had 4 more turnovers than they did the year before when Ben Roethlisberger played 16 games. So it wasn't just that. But the Steelers had 19 interceptions, 11 fumbles lost. Of their 19 interceptions, Rudolph had 9, Hodges had 8, Roethlisberger had 1, and the other one went 2.
Oh, shoot. James Conner.
No, it wasn't James Conner.
Close. Oh, no, that's right. Shoot. Go ahead.
Jalen Samuels.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
At home against the Baltimore Ravens when the Wildcat worked so well the week before. They come out against the Ravens. I'm pretty sure it was the first play of the second drive, and interception deep in their own territory. So, but yeah, you were right. You knew it was the running back.
I know it was that Wildcat formation.
Yep. And that's what happened there. So even though Rudolph had more playing time, had more starts and everything, he only had 1 more interception than Hodges. The 2 of them, neither one of them were great with that. They each had a 4 interception game, which really added to those numbers. Rudolph's was against the Browns. And unfortunately, we saw Hodges when we were there on the last home game on a Sunday night against Buffalo. So with those guys, a lot of it was when they had them, boy, did they have them. What was interesting was the fumbles. There was 11 fumbles lost by the Steelers. Two players were credited with 2 fumbles lost on the season. Do you know who the 2 players are? I'm going to be impressed if you get both of them.
James Conner.
James Conner. Here's what's crazy.
They didn't give that fumble to him, did they?
That's what I was going to say. I would have said James Conner because he had the fumble in the San Francisco game and he had the fumble in the Rams game. They did not give that fumble on the Wildcat play to James Conner. They gave it to the other person who ended up with 2, which was Deontay Johnson. So Deontay Johnson, because he fumbled the first series against Cincinnati, which gave them a field goal their first game and the only points they scored that game. And then they charged him with that fumble against the Rams. I'm going to be really impressed. No, I said the Rams, not the Rams. Wrong game that you and I were both at. Not the Rams. Buffalo.
Well, yeah. Thank you. I'm like, wait a minute, not the Rams.
Yeah, I knew you and I were both at the stadium, but it was the wrong game we were both at. I'm going to be impressed if you get the other one with 2 fumbles. Anyone in the live chat thinks they know who it was that lost 2 fumbles in 2019? So, it wasn't Connor. He only had 1. There we go. Solarverse says Benny Snell. Benny Snell only had 1 loss. Juju only had 1 loss. He only has 2 career fumbles. The problem is they were I did an article on this. Yeah, I did an article on this. You realize if Juju catches, I'm giving the live chat a chance to answer. If Juju catches 13 more passes without fumbling a ball next season, he will become the all-time least likely fumbling receiver in Pittsburgh Steelers history who has at least 200 receptions. So Juju doesn't fumble much. But when he does,
he does a critical situation.
Boy, does it hurt. Yep. We had James Washington. James Washington only had 1. Moncrief didn't have any. You have to catch the ball.
Yeah, you got to be able to catch the ball there if I could drink her to be able to fumble it.
In order to fumble it. Okay, are you ready? You guys going to love this. Tied for leading the Pittsburgh Steelers, the 2019 Pittsburgh Steelers, in fumbles. Lost. He even had a third one because I'll tell you in a minute. He even had a third one because he had 2 fumbles on one play. Fumbled, recovered it, and then fumbled it again. Would be one Jordan Berry. Jordan Berry lost 2 fumbles for the Steelers in 2019. Technically, they counted as a lost fumble and a turnover when they had the botched fake punt against Arizona. When they called it off and he didn't hear him call it off and he goes to run and everyone's still rushing him. Yeah, he actually fumbled the ball when they recovered. It didn't matter because the Cardinals were going to get the ball there anyway. But that was his 1 fumble lost. And then against the Ravens, he, in the pouring rain, he dropped the snap, picked up the snap, and then lost the ball again. So he had 2 fumbles on the same play, one of which was lost, and it was for a touchdown. So that was, which is a shame because that was in the last quarter of the season, and he really was having a good season up until that point. And between the fumbles and other things, he just kind of fell apart there at the end.
Yeah, but, like he was having a year where it's like, oh, hey, maybe we did good. We kept him around, blah, blah, blah. And then the last 4 or 5 games was like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, I did a number. I know someone threw out a number of 1.8 on cap. I don't know that it's 1.8 on cap. I think it might be 1.8 salary, but there's $300K of dead money because I was thinking Jordan Berry was around $1.5 million. Don't quote me for sure. I'm just going from memory. That would be if they moved on from Berry. The thing is, can you get much worse for cheaper? Meaning, can you have a decent replacement for a much lower cost? That's what the Steelers have to answer with Jordan Berry.
Yep.
But the other film, I mentioned most of them. Connor with 1, Hodges with 1. Technically, you and I were sitting next to each other. Returned for a touchdown right to start the game.
Yeah, that one. That one go on? Did they count that on Rudolph?
They did not.
It goes on Pouncey.
They counted it on Pouncey.
Good. They should have because that snap was terrible.
Yeah, because they counted Pouncey, not Rudolph. Rudolph didn't lose any this season. Samuels lost one against the Colts. Juju, of course, against Baltimore. We don't want to rehash that one. Snell also lost one against the Cardinals. and James Washington lost one against the Rams. Wasn't that one where he had that big play down the sidelines and they stripped it out the last second? That was coming at us on the right sideline, on the Steelers sideline.
Yeah, wasn't that on a 3rd down too? And didn't we end up saying that basically was a punt?
Yeah, because it was. I mean, he caught it. That's what stinks is that he caught it, and it would have been a good 1st down. But that's what happened. Here's what's interesting: 11 fumbles that the Steelers had on the season. I didn't do this with interceptions because it was just too much. 6 of those fumbles occurred in games that they won, and 5 of them occurred in games that they lost. So they almost 50-50, and they finished 500 for the season. So it kind of, the fumbles didn't line up nearly as much as the interceptions, which led to the losses. So that was some interesting stuff. Just so you know, leading the team in fumbles, not necessarily lost, was a tie between Deontay Johnson fumbled 5 times, only lost twice, and Devlin Hodges fumbled 5 times and lost 1. I think Rudolph and Pouncey were tied with 4. And then everyone else, other than that, Barry had the 3, the way we explained it. And everyone else just only ever had 1 fumble, whether or not they lost it or not.
You know what? Duck was lucky he only lost 1. I remember one in particular that the Big Al pounced on that I couldn't believe. Like, there was nobody around, but like folks were slow to see the fumble or whatever. Next thing you know, Big Al's laying on it. And I'm like, we should have lost that one.
Yes. Yeah. That's the thing when you're talking about the strip sacks.
So that number could have been worse.
Yeah.
Could have been.
Yes. Before I break down a couple more of these games, you know what? I want to come back to that question. Real quick. What was interesting is I looked at the plus minus of every game for the Steelers this year. The Steelers only had a minus turnover differential in 4 games. They only had 4 games where they were minus.
Well, let's see. One of those was week 17.
Actually, no, that wasn't.
Did we break even in week 17?
Week 17, that was going to be my next question. So that's all right. We'll talk it first. You set it up. Week 17 was the only week of the season where the Steelers were 0, plus minus 0, where they were even. Is that both the Steelers and the Ravens each had
maybe
2
just
turnovers.
Felt like it because that awful Jordan Berry fumble for the touchdown.
No, well, especially when you're talking, 7 points on the turnover is just
that's what I mean. It's like
Mm-hmm. So that was the even. So when they were even, they were 1 game and they lost that game. 4 games where they were minus. I'll let you know, all of them were losses. So they were minus in week 1 against New England.
Correct. They were minus. They were minus against Buffalo.
They were minus against Buffalo. They were minus 3.
Yeah,
because they had 5 turnovers.
Oh, trust me, that was rough sitting there putting up with that.
The other one was when so that was when Hodges threw 4 interceptions. Another one was when
Rudolph
threw 4 interceptions
on the Thursday night in Cleveland.
And
so then, hold on, that was the 4th one.
The 4th one, I'll be honest with you, I think it's the reason they lost the game. And that would be because they finished terrible. That was week 16 against the Jets. So the Steelers, I mean, think about it. We'll break it down a second. So it was -1 against New England, minus 4 against Cleveland. They had a stretch from New England to Cleveland where they were positive in the turnover margin each week. Now, unfortunately, but 3 of them still resulted in losses.
And the one in there that really, really bugged me was the San Francisco game.
Absolutely. You got 5 takeaways and you lost the game. And honestly, if anyone was reading BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, at the end of the day today, our last article we released was my Tomlin Tuesday, throwing back to various points of the season, kind of going through an order. I did the San Francisco game, his post-game comments. And the problem was that they didn't take advantage of their turnovers. The Steelers on the takeaways, they had 6 points off turnovers, five takeaways, only 6 points off of them. Where the 49ers, their 2 takeaways, 14 points.
Yep.
That's exactly what Tomlin equated it to, and he was exactly right. That James, they had the lead just over 5 minutes. They had just got a first down with James Conner back to back, a run and then a catch. Then the fumble gives it right back to him. So of those 5 takeaways in San Francisco, 2 of them were already in field goal range and they ended up with field goals. And 3 of them was where they kept San Francisco from scoring because they were already in field goal range. So that's just kind of how it works. So, but that was also, first game without Ben Roethlisberger. So you look at Seattle.
But when
I know.
Well, wasn't it after that we were talking that, the defense was going to have to do more than just turn the ball over? They were going to have to score.
Yes, that's when we started talking about that, because that's kind of how things went. So they were +1 against Seattle, lost the game, but that's when they lost their quarterback at halftime. And that's before the defense was what it was. San Francisco, the defense was what it was, but they had a +3 turnover margin and they lost the game by 4 to the eventual NFC champions. And then the only other game where they had a positive turnover margin was the overtime loss at home to Baltimore, where you lost your quarterback early in the third quarter. Although the quarterback came in, played better than the one that was in there, I do believe. But that was turnovers coming back, really costing the Steelers with that Juju fumble. So I'm going to bring this up because this is what we're going to talk about next. And I see that X is in the live chat, who dropped a super chat last week after we ended the show. So I'm actually going to answer that in the Q&A tonight on the next show. So Max wanted to know, because this leads into what we're doing, will the streak end next season?
Well, me being the geeky math guy that I am would say yes, because the odds, statistically speaking, that will end next season.
Yes.
And I would have to imagine.
You might be answering my next question.
If one Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger comes back and is a quarterback, and we can get any kind of balance to the running game, balance meaning, 60% pass, 40% run, I would think that we could probably do that.
Yeah. Well, it's not only, like we said before, it's not only how much you do it, it's how effective you are at doing it. That's what balance is, being able to. We mentioned this last week with Kevin. For those of you that didn't catch last week's show, make sure you go back and check that out when we had Kevin Smith, also known as Cliff Harris is Still a Punk. He joined us and had some great insight with stuff with the Steelers on last week's show. The question is, how far will the streak go? If you had to put a number on it. No, I know we don't know the schedule.
I would say I want to.
That would help to have the schedule. So I'm going to ask you pre-schedule release and post-schedule release. We'll come back and ask you this later on once we get a schedule.
All right, I'd say probably 5 games.
Yeah, I was going to say, does the streak get to 30? I think they can stop it before 30.
Yep.
But I would say it probably goes through 25.
Yeah, probably you're looking at least 2 games in, but I would say conservatively 5.
Yep.
But I'd like to see the schedule to see who we're matched up against.
And just same commenter, Maxwell had said something else. I was just about ready to say, based on 2019 records, the Steelers right now have the second easiest schedule next season, with the easiest schedule being the Baltimore Ravens. Has the easiest schedule, mainly because Cincinnati's poor record and they play them twice is one of the biggest things. So that's what people were saying in the live chat. So next year, what's going to be the difference in reducing these turnovers? You said the return of Ben Roethlisberger and giving a balanced attack, you think will knock down the turnovers.
I do. And in terms of what you were saying, how effectively we do those things plays into it as well. If we can get out and play with a lead and just go into our power running game, in the second half of some games will help. We'll up your chances for that. For not feeling that we have to work, push the ball down the field and take chances, things like that play into, possibly being able to get through that without having to press yourself, should I say, into a turnover.
Yes. Well, this is what's so frustrating.
Because that's what was happening this year at times, I felt.
Yeah.
We were having to press, and because we were having to press to try to score, we were then turning the ball over.
Yes. Yes. And what it is it was frustrating because the Steelers, for so much of the game, you could see that they were, with their young quarterbacks, sometimes they were so focused on don't turn the ball over so much that it almost seemed like it was getting in their heads a little bit at times. That in the interviews, you could hear him say, Coach Randy is, preaches to us about taking care of the ball. Well, it gets to a point where you take care of the ball so much that you don't ever move the ball. And I honestly think that's what hurt the Steelers early in the season, or maybe not just early in the season, early in the first several games started by each of the young quarterbacks, is that they were so trying, the whole philosophy.
So trying to not turn the ball over.
Yeah.
So trying to not turn the ball over that then we didn't move the ball, which then the pressure starts to build. Well, we got to move the ball. Well, then we take more chances and we turn the ball over.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see how the Steelers offense is going to work this year. How much are they going to incorporate, the Matt Canada stuff into the offense? If they don't, it was a waste of a hire. So, have him help with these various things. And if you're dealing with more disguise and deception and the team isn't just keying and knowing what you're doing, like you and I have preached so much, that's going to help you to take care of the ball. Now, in all honesty, I think Ben Roethlisberger is going to throw interceptions because he's going to push it. He's going to try to make the throws. He's not going to back down. And honestly, if he does,
but all
he's not the same Ben anyway. So
all you need is a game here or there where he doesn't throw a pick.
Yeah.
And your chances of going without a turnover go through the roof.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's what's crazy. If you look at it, the Steelers had a turnover in every game, but they averaged less than 2 a game. So when you throw in those couple games where they had 4 against Cleveland and 5 against the Bills, I mean, that's one shy of a third of that's 30% of their turnovers for the season in 2 games. Yeah. It's kind of crazy that they had one every game, but they just kept constantly have one. So
we got to keep that streak alive, man.
Yeah. So it almost seems like they were trying to do it, but I think that streak was a bit of a fluky thing. I think the fluke could continue. I mean, look at even last year. I thought the Steelers, although they got blown out in week 1, they only turned the ball over one time. The year before, 2018, they had 6 turnovers in week 1. So I kind of expect some turnovers to happen early in the season. So they've got to shake it off. If the defense is going to keep taking the ball away, then they're going to get a lot of wins if they can cut down on the turnovers. Bottom line is they turned the ball over so much in 2019. The defense had to take it away in order to keep them in the game. And banking on takeaways and having to have them in order to win is a good way to lose games.
Yeah, but the other thing, like even where our turnover numbers were here in the 8, the +8 on the year, and you think, if we got to cut that back. My bigger issue was the fact when we turned it over, we weren't turning enough turnovers into points.
Yeah, points off turnovers. Because I don't have those numbers in front of me.
I know, but if we turn more of our turnovers into points, we probably are in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I mean, if you go back, I don't want to, but if I went back and rewatched that San Francisco game, you could see that the Steelers, with it being Rudolph's first start, that when they got the ball in field goal range, they were only concerned about still making sure they got a field goal. It's like, hey, we're here for 3. The defense gave us 3 points. Let's take 3 points. They didn't do anything to say, hey, we're here. Let's reach out and snag 7 while we got it. And they didn't.
I know, and that was frustrating because it wasn't like I was saying, you got the ball on the 22-yard line. Let's throw it for the end zone on the first play, and force it into coverage. But I felt that we just went too vanilla. It was like, we got to try to get 6 out of these things instead of 3.
Yeah. So that's something I think we see with the return of Ben Roethlisberger. When they get the turnover already in scoring range, he's going to think what an utter failure it is to only get 3 points, because he's not even going to think about getting 0 points. It's the 3's guaranteed. Let's go get our 7. Yeah. And with the young guys, it seemed like, oh, we have our 3. Don't do anything to screw up and not get the 3. So I think a whole new mentality with that will be better. I still think the Steelers are going to continue to turn the ball over, because I think they're just going to be more aggressive with the return of Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
Hopefully you get the receivers holding on to the ball more. Hopefully you get the running backs holding on to the ball more. And for the love of God, could your punter please hold on to the ball and not lead your team in fumbles? So
I just hear Chris Berman in my head right now.
It's a fumble.
No, the whoop.
Yep. Oh, man. So that's one thing that we definitely don't want to have. All right. Before we go on to the next show, I wanted to talk a little bit, and we can talk about it more in the Q&A. When we go to the Q&A, I'm going to let people know they're in the live chat now. We're going to start off with a couple quick things, and we're going to let you all dictate which way things go.
But you're going to start with X's super chat, though, right?
Yeah, I'll start with X's super chat in the Q&A from last week. Then we'll get into the topic of the show real quick, which is going to be the new wide receivers coach. But I don't know how much people want to talk about this. Some people are very tired of talking about it. I'm very tired of talking about it. But it's quite an interesting story that I have to tell. And that is, I had a situation from where I did the article yesterday on Coach Tomlin's time on interview on First Take with Stephen A. Smith. If you haven't watched it, the videos are all over the place out there. Go just search for it on Google, on Twitter, on something. You can see it. He did a fantastic job, and I understand why he did it, but I didn't as much. So I'm going to take some time to lay out the story here. I wrote the article. I'm sitting there pulling, listening to stuff and typing quotes. I'm just typing quotes is what I'm doing. Jeff Hartman jumps in and is trying to help edit a couple things here and there so we could try to get it out a little bit quicker. Get the article out with a lot of Coach Tomlin's comments. Some of the things we just summed up. Like I kind of summed up his frustration with the outside the lines coverage that happened on Saturday. Yesterday afternoon, I get an email to my account that I use for Behind the Steel Curtain, which is linked on all of my articles. And it was actually from a representative from ESPN who wanted to contact me about our article and wanted to set the record straight for our readers and everything about how Coach Tomlin said something that was not accurate. That he said that the outside the lines did not talk about the results of the NFL's investigation. So I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it isn't. I didn't see the outside the lines piece. I saw parts of the Myles Garrett interview, didn't really care to see it, didn't want to see it, but I saw some of it anyway. But in this email, the representative offered for me to be able to view the entire Outside the Lines episode. Well, I thought they were sending it for us to use an article. Found out later that it wasn't. It wasn't the right thing. It was the whole episode. It wasn't copyrighted properly, so we couldn't use it. But they wanted me to at least be able to view it in order to say what I did with my article or another follow-up article. So I got a hold of Jeff. Jeff says, "Yeah, go ahead." So because sometimes I get emails from junk places I just ignore, but this was ESPN. I'm like, I didn't want to ignore it. So I get the Outside the Lines article. Now, remember, I've already heard Coach Tomlin's thing, already wrote the article on Coach Tomlin that's out there. Listen to the interview, which, of course, just made me want to roll my eyes the whole time. But then I listened to the Outside the Lines roundtable discussion panel. And my first reaction is, no wonder Mike Tomlin went on First Take and was not afraid to rip into ESPN. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. the way they covered it. They wanted to call it a he said situation, which that's actually giving it way more credit than it deserves, because the one he said didn't even come up with the he said story until days later. You can't even take what he said immediately as the same thing that's what he said later. So you could say it's a he said thing just with Garrett himself, because he didn't agree with his statements. So I did the thing, and I got a hold of Jeff, and I'm like, Jeff, I don't think Coach Tomlin's wrong here. I said, granted, they did show a graphic and they did mention that the NFL found no such evidence. But what they failed to mention, which Coach Tomlin brought up, is he said they didn't fail to mention the results of the investigation. Now, they did mention what the investigation found out, but what they failed to mention was that there was an investigation. They completely breezed over that the NFL took its time to figure this out. Now, I know I'm doing a lot of the talking. You still with me there, Rich? Good to go?
Yep.
Okay. So me having a bachelor's degree in physics and considering myself a science person, to me, the way they outlined it was much the way as if someone said, well, scientists found no evidence that this is true. Okay. Well, you can't, that statement doesn't carry very much weight, because the question is, they've never found any evidence. Have they looked for evidence? Have they done studies? You don't know, because you just say, well, they haven't found anything. But to say, all right, we have spent the last 4 years conducting research on this topic to where we have been studying this, and this. And in all the data that we've been able to gather, there is no evidence that this occurred. That carries a whole lot more weight than to say, well, scientists haven't found evidence of it. And I responded back to the person from ESPN, and I said, I'm siding with Coach Tomlin on this one, that you all completely glossed over it. You never one time in the entire segment said the word investigation. Coach Tomlin went on to describe the length and depth of that investigation, of interviewing players, interviewing officials, viewing all the audio, viewing all the video. Both the NFL did it and the Steelers did it, because the Steelers didn't want to be backing the wrong horse. You know, they weren't going to back Rudolph unless they were completely the wrong horse. Maybe I should say the wrong reindeer. They didn't want to back Rudolph if it wasn't true.
Right.
So I responded to the ESPN and let them know. And I said, because I said, you even said in your email that he did not, that his statement was false, of him saying that you didn't say anything about the investigation. I said, it's true, because you all never mentioned the word investigation at all. And then ESPN was a little bit concerned. They reached out to me. They wanted to speak to me in person. So I couldn't set it up last night because I wanted to check with Jeff first. You know, always want to check with the editor, make sure I wanted to represent the website well. So this morning, after dropping my son off at preschool, I had a conversation with a representative from ESPN. And I explained to them where I came from. And I explained to them the conclusion. Come to find out, they had sent that out to a lot of people that had reported that about Tomlin. I was the only one who didn't back down and just agree with them that, oh, okay, you mentioned it. Thanks for letting us know. I didn't back down. And that's why they wanted to talk to me, because I was the only one who didn't back down. I don't know who all it was. I don't know if they did other Steelers beat writers or anything like that, but I didn't back down because that's the way I felt about it. And I explained it to her. I said, I want to present this to our readers to let them make the decision themselves. And that's when I found out that I could not use the full video. They're supposedly trying to get me the video of just the panel. They never released it. They never released that part of the show just for people to go back and see. There's no way to see it except, I have a link that is private only to me. So I'm like, this really was bad for him, because they basically ignored all the evidence, ignored everything that was out there. And because the guy did the interview with them, they wanted to make him look good. And they just spun his side of the story and basically gave him a platform to continue to tear down Mason Rudolph. And it was interesting. And I mean, they were cordial with me the whole time. The person was very polite. And they said that they were going to take my concerns to the actual panel she's like, well, I'm going to have a meeting with him later today, because this was a producer on the show, or producer communication. I don't want to say I don't know for sure they were a producer. So she says, I'm going to share this with the panel. And this is something that was brought up, that maybe they didn't handle this the proper way. And so I might have made a name for Behind the Steel Curtain at ESPN, but it might not be for the right reasons. So I want to know that story. What do you think?
Hey, if there's anything we've learned from ESPN, it doesn't matter what the press is. You just go get whatever you can get, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if, you made the wrong name, you got Behind the Steel Curtain out there. That's all you should really care about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, forget it's a bad name. If people are talking about you, it's better than them not talking about you. So, but no, I wanted to uphold the integrity of the site. That is why I know you are like, oh, just sharing it. I can't do that. There's legal ramifications there. I'm not going to do something that would jeopardize BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. But I viewed the video, and what's nice is it was on my phone. I had my wife view it. She thought it was more ridiculous than I did. And she's not even a football fan. And she hadn't heard what Coach Tomlin had said. She just viewed it on its face. She's like, they were just completely just sucking up to this guy because he came and did the interview with them. It was bad. They completely, it seemed like there was no, they weren't seeking the truth. They weren't seeking the truth. And I said it in the article. I almost said it in a little bit worse way, but I calmed down a little bit. It seemed like they were more interested in clicks and views than the truth, because the truth is, is really behind Rudolph. I know a lot of, we've talked about a lot on the site. For Mike Tomlin, one of the few African-American head coaches in the NFL, for the Rooney family, the Rooney Rule and everything, for them who didn't have any reason to say anything. It's not like, you're talking about a player that if he is a career backup, that would be a good career for him. It's not like they needed to stick their necks out for Mason Rudolph, but they are, because they believe him to be in the right, and all the evidence compiled shows that he is. So that's that. That was my ESPN story. So I'm really sorry that for those of you that read the article today, it came out at 12:30 today. At BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, that it did not. I had to change the article right before it went out. It was supposed to actually go out at 10:30, but we were trying to get the video, and I still can't. ESPN said they were working with me, but they still don't have it for me to use. If they do, I'm going to reissue the article and include it in there, because I really wish people could make that decision for themselves to show how much Mike Tomlin stood up for his guys. So. Sorry,
that's all right.
I just went off on that.
I'd gone in and commented on your story too. It's having been a guy that basically grew up with ESPN. Like when I was in college and right after college, when I was at, if I was in the house and the TV was on, 95% of the time it was on ESPN.
Yes,
I watched anything and everything they have. Always caught Sports Center. Always caught Baseball Tonight. Always caught those shows that I felt was just guys reporting sports. And they've lost that.
Yes.
They've gone, for lack of a better term, more, although not, more political and talking about issues and this and that. And they've totally lost what they're doing. And I'll be honest with you.
Button topics. They're not interested. You can't go and get highlights. All you get is hot button issues. That's what you get.
That's why they're losing out to Fox Sports.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, then if you really want to get into it, there you go. I'll get behind the steel curtain in hot water. That's why they sold out to Garrett. Okay. First of all, I want to know how much money they paid him to do that interview, because they probably paid him a ton.
Probably.
To come to them and not to Fox Sports or somebody else. So because, and again, like you were saying, because he went with them, then they felt they had to, he was then their guy. They had to kind of back their guy instead of reporting.
Yeah. So. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's what they don't report. I used to keep ESPN, especially in college, because, college, you can't try to have silence, because if you're living in a residence hall, there's always going to be noise. I used to sleep with the TV on. It was always on ESPN. You know what? The only time ESPN is ever on in my house now is if I'm watching a live sporting event that is on ESPN. That's it. It was on to watch some XFL this past weekend. That was it.
There's only one other show that I watch regularly on ESPN, and NFL Live.
Yeah, I don't even get that. I don't even get that because another article
I don't watch it all the time, but that's the only other show I watch with any kind of regularity is NFL Live. And when I think about how much I used to watch that station and don't now, it's really it's over the past probably 8 to 10 years that they have really, in my opinion, the way they're covering sports has changed so much.
Yeah, it does. Well, they're changing with the times, and they're changing with it's basically, I don't want to get into this too much, but it's like we're an outrage culture. We want to we want the hot button topic. We want to be outraged. We want to be, and that's what drives the needle, and that's what they're trying to do. And honestly, that is good for the vocal few, but not for the majority, believe it or not. So with this, we want to roll into the Q&A, so that way we can really start paying attention to what you all were saying. So we're going to bring this to a close, but before we do, I've had it scrolling across the bottom. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. That's the best thing you can do for support. Now, I'm going to say it now because don't do it here. But when we get to the Q&A, if you have something you want to bring up, a comment, a question, something of that nature, you can use the super chat feature and we will guarantee that we get to it. You just type in your comment, hit that $, donate any amount of money you want to the show, and we will use it. Don't feel like you have to do it. It's not like we're here soliciting your money. That's not what we're doing. The best thing you can do to help us, if not that, is make sure you are hitting the like button. Also, make sure you are checking out BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. Like I said, I have my article. You can't miss it. It actually has the ESPN. It has an ESPN banner as its main picture. We have that one there. Cliff Harris is still a punk. He had another great article out today. We have stuff about the new wide receivers coach. I do my Tomlin Tuesday stuff. We're giving you 8 to 10 articles every day, even in the off season. And then also make sure that you're tuned into the family of podcasts. Here on Monday night, they decided to have a little bit of a change. They felt like having to stick to the Hangover title was too much during the regular season. So instead they did a Q&A, but you want to know the truth? It was the same show. It was the same Brian and Tony doing the same kind of stuff. So don't let the title get you down. We also, tomorrow night, you'll have the standard on Wednesday night. Thursday night, Steelers preview with myself, Jeff Hartman, and Brian Anthony Davis. Lance Williams with his show on Friday of Yeah, I Said It. Saturday, our rolling burning question, which I don't know, it might even end up having to be me because we got off on our schedule a little bit. And then Sunday, they debuted a new show on Sunday, Jeff and Lance, the homer and the hater, which was quite interesting, which is Lance embracing his heel persona. And with all things, I mean, Lance got off on a text message thing with Jeff and I last week, and I didn't back down from him. I was like, I'm not dealing with your hate. But it was a lot of fun. I still love Lance. So lots of good stuff to do there. You ready to do this Q&A, bro?
Yep, let's do it. Let's switch them over.
We're going to end the show. For those of you that are here with us live, we'll be back in 3 to 5 minutes. And as Lance Williams says, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. Thanks for geeking out with us.